Well, if I told you that I cried multiple times during these 2 episodes of the Obi-Wan show, then I think it will just be redundant. I'm sure you guys all cried together with me because there were a lot of instances and moments here hit home. It was something that I was preparing myself for, but it was still useless, It's just one of those feels. Obi-Wan hits it, Ewan McGregor has got it down pat, man. Both these 2 episodes were as violent as Disney Plus could go, so I'm happy about that too. It's not one of those purified shows that nothing bad could happen, just exclusively for kids, although it had a kid in it. I mean, if you're watching this review, spoilers, but Reva cuts an old lady's freaking hand off right in the middle of the square. So there's not much to be said. Let's start with the episode 1 review. Later on, we're going to have episode 2 review as well, so stick around for that, subscribe. Let's get it started. That start though, it has been a long time since we've seen Coruscant, and it started not only on Coruscant, but on the Jedi Temple seconds before Order 66. Younglings training, and all of a sudden clones enter and they start shooting the Jedi as she's trying to clear a path for the younglings to escape, not knowing what the heck is going on. There's one of 2 ways this went. So either these younglings escaped as the camera panned away from them, or they went directly for the High Council chambers, which of course we know their fate, what happened. Ultimately, they were killed by none other than Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker, whichever you want to pick, during Order 66. There's definitely a duality there. But we move on 10 years later on Tatooine. It's always a pleasure and an interesting environment to see Tatooine, or in this case, I think it's most Isley going about their business. Everybody, as per usual, is trading with somebody, talking with somebody, and it's a moment that we've seen in the trailers. The Inquisitors has landed. With the ship docking, 3 people come out. It's the Grand Inquisitor first, the 5th brother behind him, and Reva last. I assume that this was the way the writers wanted to show us the rank. Of course, the Grand Inquisitor being above everybody else. Leaving Reva last shows us that they think they have domination over her. As we see later on, it's not exactly so. I, of course, loved the fact that there was literally no talking from anybody up until they walked into the cantina, or as he calls it, the saloon. This is when the Grand Inquisitor starts pontificating, showing exactly the cockroaches that the Jedi are and their weaknesses. We see, though, 2 different types of mentalities here, and it is very important to showcase that. I think this worked a lot in Reva's characterization in her favor, because while the Grand Inquisitor is trying to be methodical in discovering the secret Jedi hiding here, Reva cuts straight to the point, throws a knife at the barkeep's head, and Nari stops it with the Force. In other words, completely identifying himself. What happens next is kind of weird. This is the only thing that bothered me in the show because it's very circumstantial in a lot of areas. This is when Nari escapes, and I don't understand how did he escape so fast from 3 Inquisitors that had him completely surrounded. You can always use the chaos as an excuse, but as with Nari and with little kid Leia, in a lot of instances running away from people, it kind of did not make sense for me, but I guess we'll just have to move on, This is the first time that we see the Grand Inquisitor kind of checking Reva, and of course we know it's not going to be the last. Took me a second to figure out what happened in the next scene, but once I paused it, I eventually realized that this is a Purgle-looking animal that actually crash-landed from above and left a trail a couple of kilometers behind. You quickly realize that there is actually a pseudo-meat factory going on here because people are cutting up this Purgle, the Purgle's meat, in perfect squares. They actually look pretty juicy, I gotta say. And in the end, we see our favorite trolling Jedi Master, now retired officially, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now going by Ben, of course. He finishes his work. Before he leaves, every time we see him picking up one small slice of meat with him, basically sneaking it outside. They don't show specifically what he does with the meat. I assume he eats it for himself. In the beginning, I thought maybe he's leaving it off for somebody else, But if the writers are actually giving us a wink wink or a hint here, in the comics, which are actually canon, in the Star Wars comics, in the Book of Obi-Wan, we see him talking to Qui-Gon and actually telling him that he's been isolated for so long and he has forgotten what real food tastes like. There's a quote, "That's what happens when you eat snake for a year straight." What's unfortunate in the end is that we actually see Obi-Wan has lost his tenacity, his faith, by simply looking at another person getting bullied by his superior and not even intervening. He just carries on like nothing as usual. It is made very clear that his days are pretty much mundane. Every day replaces the last, and it's the same all over. Interestingly, at this point in time, 10 years later, he does not have his Kenobi hut as of yet. He is living in what seems like a cavernous space that was modified to be living quarters. At this point, we get introduced to Tika, the Jawa, who comes around every now and then and trades with Obi-Wan whatever he has left. The toy that Obi-Wan picks up is exactly the one that we see Luke with playing in A New Hope when C-3PO is taking a bath. Luke is dreaming and talking about his aspirations and at the same time playing with this toy shuttle. And also we see that Tika is good old swindler Jawa as per usual. Tika steals his processing board only to sell it back to Obi-Wan again, albeit not even cleaned. He also lets Obi-Wan know of a Jedi presence, telling him that they have raided a Jedi ship nearby and he was trying to sell him a Jedi belt. This was a way to let him know that there is a Jedi present on Tatooine. We've come to expect this. I was pretty much knew that Obi-Wan was still going to be haunted. This sleeping scene and him having nightmares is reminiscent of what happened in the unfinished episode of the Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan and Anakin have that now very famous dialogue of Anakin being frustrated with Ahsoka, telling Obi-Wan that how would you sleep if you knew that you had failed me? Obi-Wan trying to sleep and telling him that that's never going to happen. Well, we kind of see the lasting effects. Yes, it is true Obi-Wan is not sleeping well knowing that he had failed Anakin. He even tries to commune with Qui-Gon, although to no avail. While we don't see Qui-Gon right at that second, I believe, of course, as everybody does, that Qui-Gon will appear at some point in time, although they are saving him for a very crucial moment. I suppose during his duel between Vader and Obi-Wan, something will happen, and Qui-Gon will intervene. They're doing a similar thing with his lightsaber as well. Obi-Wan did not ignite his lightsaber once during these two episodes, so I understand the type of writing that they're going for. They're keeping things close to the vest and presenting them only in special occasions. Again, a shot from the trailer, we see Obi-Wan looking after Luke with his binoculars. Even at this age, Luke is a troublemaker escaping from his uncle Owen. During the night, Obi-Wan leaves the toy shuttle at the front gate of the farm. Somebody, though, is following Kenobi, and Nari reveals himself to be the one doing so, trying to convince him to come back. You see this as a tempting scene. With each passing moment of this episode, of episode 1, we see how detached Obi-Wan has been from everything. The reality sets in. He doesn't have his lightsaber, he doesn't even seem to have the Force, and he doesn't respond to the name Obi-Wan either. He tells Nari that his name is Ben. In the trailers, we hear Obi-Wan talking to somebody, telling him to stay hidden, that the Jedi lost. We now understand in episode 1 that he was actually talking to Nari, somebody that we did not identify from the trailers. Well, this episode was a lot of firsts, and another first is the ground level of Alderaan. Before it got blown up to smithereens, we actually see how Bail Organa lived together with his daughter, Leia Organa, and his wife. Let's just say a senator's life is quite a luxurious one, if we go by Bail Organa. Leia, of course, similar to Luke, is a notorious troublemaker. Immediately, we see her escape her mother. We learn that the fly droid we've been seeing in the trailer is called Lola. She accompanies Leia basically everywhere. I quickly want to mention a reference, a very weird reference, by Bail Organa, saying that raising Leia is like raising a Glorag. Now, a glorag is a very deep cut, and I'm not sure why they actually brought it to the front because it's so minuscule that, I don't know, I just found it weird. A glorag is a creature that was first introduced in the Star Wars Adventure Journal in a story called Wanted by Kraken. Now, this story is actually Legends. This thing came out in 1996, and they are just briefly mentioned. It takes place after the Empire collapsed in the New Republic era, so completely off the left field, but that is where the glorag comes from. So we again go back to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is just living his mundane life again, although this time it gets disrupted by Owen, who throws his toys at his feet, tells him to leave them alone, and that they don't need his help. Luke won't be trained like his father did. This scene kind of served the purpose of showing that both Owen and Obi-Wan do not know that Anakin is actually alive, because Owen mentions that Anakin is dead, and Obi-Wan looks down, reaffirming Owen's thinking. In that area, the fifth brother and Reva show up. While the fifth brother is trying to entice them with rewards on information on Jedi, Reva again is going the opposite direction: intimidation and fear. This is when we get one of the coolest moments, I think, and kind of a defining moment for me, because up until now, The Mandalorian has been kind of gruesome. The Book of Boba Fett, though, was a drastic step back, which really devastated me. A lady is complaining that the Empire has no jurisdiction in the Outer Rim. Reva simply ignites her lightsaber and cuts her hand in front of everyone. We even see that hand fall to the ground. She then goes on to threaten Owen Lars. Man, how lucky are they that they found Joel Edgerton even back in the day during Revenge of the Sith. Now he's back for the Obi-Wan series, and he was a great Owen Lars. I really, really loved him in this role. He went up against Obi-Wan. He went up against Reva. He did not give an F to anybody. He's a hard-nosed, tough individual, and it kind of shows why him and Luke clashed so often. The Inquisitors eventually leave them alone, but the fifth brother and Reva have some exchange of words that are not too pleasant. The back of the head guy that we see the Grand Inquisitor threatening in the trailer, it turns out to be Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, although not a big fan myself. I noticed that he was playing this kidnapper in what actually ended up being kind of the Vespa chase scene 2.0 in my opinion. It makes me sad because the kid playing Leia is pretty good, not a great actor when put against Ewan McGregor. Those scenes were kind of hard to see. The problem is that the writers wrote her character as if she had legs of an adult. She does not. She's just a kid. What's worse is that this kid did not look 10 years old. I'm sorry, guys. This kid actually kind of looked like 7 max. And she was running like a 7-year-old while 3 kidnappers, were running into branches, which is kind of embarrassing, and it was not believable in the least that this kid could escape all these 3 adults combined. So that chase scene was kind of cringy, but I digress. I guess we could just, move on. It's not the worst thing ever, but I don't see the need of, getting these scenes in there where we don't need to see a kid Leia chase scene. In the end, they got him. And it is, in fact, as the leaks predicted, this is what motivates Obi-Wan ultimately to leave Tatooine. First, a message is sent by both Bail and Brea, and again, we see a broken down Obi-Wan. The camera intentionally closes in on his face. We see the fear and the broken-hearted Obi-Wan that has just lived a complete mundane life for the last 10 years. He is not the adventurous Jedi he once was. And without skipping a beat, after that scene, they show Leia getting tied down and that she still has her droid Lola. Immediately afterwards, we see again Obi-Wan taking a slice of meat and proceeding with the rest of his day. The writers and the directors just made a very artistic choice in this first episode to constantly remind us that this is how Obi-Wan's life has gone through over these 10 years. He just lives the same thing all over again, does the same things, and basically is ritualistic, and he has formed habits that he just can't break anymore. He All he wants to do is do his job and look after Luke. That's all his mission is. While he is coming back for his Yopi, he actually sees Nari, that he was captured by the Inquisitors and hung to death in front of the town square. Getting back to his shelter, the alarm detection tells Obi-Wan that there is actually a person inside, and it is Bail Organa. He has come to Obi-Wan's hideout, begging, pleading for him to come back, to save his daughter. I'm gonna tell you guys something that is very interesting that I kind of picked up. The same way Darth Vader's trigger word is Obi-Wan Kenobi, the same goes for Obi-Wan as well, because the moment Bail Organa mentions the name Anakin and that failure is all in the past, Obi-Wan kind of breaks down again and is afraid that he will fail again, same as he failed Anakin. So it goes both ways for Vader and Obi-Wan. Lola is captured and crushed by the kidnapper, who assures Leia that nobody is coming after her, but we see that things had finally turned around because Obi-Wan goes for the desert, the place where he knows he has buried his lightsaber, similar to what he told Nari. And he finally uncovers the wooden box, the same wooden box that was seen in A New Hope inside his hut, where he takes out Anakin's lightsaber to give to Luke. Inside, we see both Anakin's lightsaber and his lightsaber as well. He is hesitant still, but he knows he has to. And this is exactly what Reva actually wanted. Yes, it is revealed that Reva was the one who orchestrated the kidnapping just in order to lure Kenobi out of hiding, knowing that he just could not resist. And indeed, he couldn't. So Obi-Wan is on his way, heading straight for Daiyu, the place where the kidnappers took Leia. This is pretty much episode 1. Subsequently, episode 2 was even better in many respects. However, I do want to cover a lot of things in detail by making a couple of videos as the week goes on. So I'm going to cover episode 2 pretty fast by saying Obi-Wan lands on Daiyu. There's a hint of death sticks, although not directly mentioned, only spices. We finally have a space meth lab in Star Wars. Kumail Nanjiani plays a fake Jedi, literally caught red-handed by Obi-Wan, which was spectacular to see, and I really loved Kumail's role as Haja. It really was the funniest aspect of that episode. But after Obi-Wan frees Leia from captivity, Reva is on the hunt. Also, Obi-Wan encounters an old veteran of the Clone Wars in the streets begging for money, and that is a clone trooper. So Temuera Morrison finally played a real clone trooper in Star Wars and not a fake CGI one like in the prequels. Haja helps Obi-Wan and Leia escape. Before they could escape on the cargo ship, however, Reva corners Obi-Wan, and this is the moment where Obi-Wan learns that Anakin is actually alive, not dead like Obi-Wan had thought so for 10 years straight now. This is very logical since Obi-Wan was completely isolated here on Tatooine and did not know anything. The biggest question to come out of episode 2, how come the Grand Inquisitor is dead? How did Reva kill him now? Then why do we see him in the animated show Star Wars Rebels? Well, I think the Grand Inquisitor kind of answered that question when he told Kanan that there are worse things than death. Many of you that read the comics know what I'm about to cover next in a future video where I'm going to explain exactly what I think happened with the Inquisitor and how we see him in the future Star Wars timeline, like in Rebels and so forth. Thank you guys so much for watching both these reviews. I know episode 2 was short, but I'm going to cover a lot more things in detail, so you gotta subscribe and hang around for those explanations as well. Thank you so much for watching this, and if you enjoyed, leave a thumbs up down below, subscribe for dailies. Now you can have an awesome day, Star Wars fans. I'll see you in the next video, and may the Force be with you. Until then.